Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's football show here on STV2. The main talking points on tonight's programme: Hearts sack Ian Cathro, Stephen Presley becomes the early favourite for the Tynecastle hot seat, Lee Griffiths looks all set to play his part in Celtic's Champions League second leg against Rosenborg. Yeah, just a few of the talking points. Alan Ruff is alongside me, Peter Martin. I'm delighted to say our Bootroom guest is journalist Darryl Broadfoot, who will take us through some of the highlights and the lows of today's news. Of course, today it's all about Ian Cathro sacked at Hearts. There is indeed the sorry stats from his 7-month reign at Tynecastle. Has it come as a surprise to you, Ruffy?
Yeah, as we spoke about it yesterday, I thought he would have been given at least the start of the season and to try and get it sorted out. But again, the Hearts directors or the board haven't messed about. You know, all through the season last year when there was things who went wrong, they acted really quickly and they sorted things out. And again, you know, they'll know what's been happening behind the scenes, and they've obviously come to the decision that the results and that isn't good enough for Hearts, so he had to go. Yeah,
Darryl, a 23% win ratio is not good, but once you start seeing the scarves getting thrown, the fans turning on him as well, that's the alarm bells for Anne Budge more than anyone else.
Yeah, combination of factors. Bluntly, a manager's judging results. Not only were they not good enough, they were borderline embarrassing, and it gives me no pleasure to say that, because I was excited about his appointment, the appointment of him along with Austin McPhee. Hasn't worked. As Ruffy said, Hearts on a no-win situation. If they didn't act with 4 away games in a trot, and 4 of the toughest games you could hope for while the stand's being redeveloped, if they waited, you'd have a situation where a new manager would come in with no transfer window left open, and accusations of why didn't you act sooner when you had that win ratio of 23%. They've now got a situation where they regroup. There'll be a clamour for the structure to be looked at, but people forget that the same structure helped Robbie Neilson become, and let's bear in mind, Robbie Neilson, when he was appointed, was as big a risk, untested at that level. A club who were desperate to get back into the top flight. Not only did they do that, they finished in the top 3 in his first season. Hearts commended again for taking such a gamble, one that I think excited lots of Scottish football, but also left certain people feeling that it was actually a step too far for them. And unfortunately, it hasn't worked.
Yeah, results are the key, Ruffy, but over and above that, I think there were a number of problems that surfaced throughout his 7 months in charge. I didn't like the pictures of John Daly quickly rushing down from Craig Levein after a quick chat. He tried to brush that off. The Jamie Walker situation didn't seem to help either. And of course, listen, when you lose to your great rivals, especially in the Cup, that really compounds the pressure.
Yeah, as I said just a couple of minutes ago, I think there obviously been things going on behind the scenes. Obviously the results aren't good enough, but I think obviously the people in charge, and I mean Craig Levein as well, he's actively seeing what's going on at training, what's happening with the transfers and all that stuff, and I think these things they have to take a step back and say, well, where are we going? You know, is it going to change? Do we think it's going to change, or do we need to make a change? And certainly They have acted very quickly. Again, the supporters have played a big part in it, as they have in rebuilding Hearts to where they are. So I suppose they've got to take that into consideration as well. They need to keep the supporters on board, as they have done in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I must admit, I thought he might have got the month of August, albeit it would have been very, very difficult to pick up points. Yesterday we had a Hearts fan on, talking to him on a Skype call. Nicholas Walker had his thoughts on who he'd like to see replace Ian Cathro.
Well, I think that's a tricky one, because if Levine stays, is there many guys out there that want to work with him? I think that'd be interesting. I mean, personally, as a fan, I would like to see Paul Hartley. That would be my choice.
You see, that's the biggest problem. You know, I think Nicholas, like so many other Hearts fans, are now looking. I think there's a turn against Craig Levine. You know, he's maybe not flavour of the month out with the Hearts family, but now within the Hearts family, I think there's a little turn in people questioning Craig Levine now.
Yeah, but I think people have been quick to use Ian Cathro's success to have a go at Craig Levine. I've worked with Craig Levine for many a year when he was Scotland national coach. You know where you stand with Craig. Craig has a very fixed view on the direction of travel. That's why Anne Budge put him in charge of the football department. You touched on things like sending notes down to the dug. I think we need to get over that in Scottish football. We still see that as a kind of alien concept. When the minute you have a director of football in place, you have a head coach. The head coach is there to work with those players and get the best out of them, but the director of football has oversight over the structure and, whether people like it or not, the way that the team's set up, and the manager's there to coach the players as best they can. I think sometimes we get held up.
Well, that's a good point, you making that. How many people are going to live with that, Darryl? Because quite simply, let's look at the 4 candidates that I've put up. There are many other candidates who will gather pace. There are early favourites here. Stephen Presley, for one, an early favourite alongside Paul Hartley, Tommy Wright and Peter Houston. I think Peter Houston would be the perfect choice because experience, CV, with a Scottish Cup winner with Dundee United. And of course, Levine is one of his old pals. That's probably one thing in his favour. But those experienced managers won't buy into what you're saying. It doesn't matter if it's the way ahead, the forward thinking. I don't think too many of them would be happy for somebody to say, listen, I'm not happy with the way you're playing.
When you look at the number of managers who are out of work in Scottish football, you're telling me that Stephen Presley, Paul Hartley, if given the chance to work at a club who have aspirations to be one of the top 3 in Scottish football, that they would turn round while out of employment and say, no, I can't do that on a point of principle. Yeah. When you look at the squad that's in place, and again, as much as Ian Cathro is the architect of his own downfall at Hearts, I don't think the results escape that. You look at the circumstances as well. Callum Patterson, terrible knee injury, literally 24 hours before he got a big move to the Premiership, that collapsed. John Souttar, another serious injury. So there have been mitigating circumstances for Ian Cathro. A total of 19 players have left in the summer. So you've got a new squad to deal with. You've got experienced players like Christophe Berra. Yeah. You've got a striker in Kyle Lafferty who lit up the European qualifiers for Northern Ireland. You're not telling me that a Paul Hartley would not want to take that job on with that group of players.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword there. I mean, Darryl puts points together for the defence of Ian Cathro, some of the mitigating circumstances, but I watched Hearts, Ruffy. They didn't inspire. I mean, they've just got rid of Johnson. He didn't light things up. This is a team that finished second, and he had the chance to just take that team on. He didn't need major surgery in my mind. It needed to be tweaked and enhanced.
Yeah. Well, he obviously thought it did because as soon as he came in, I think he was 8 new players he got in, and I think in the very first week he was there, when the game came in the Saturday, all the new signings played. It was a complete, overhaul, and it worked for a while, but then obviously it didn't. And to get back to the Craig Levine thing, as long as Cathro bought into him signing messages and coming into the dressing room, that's okay. I don't think we'd have been given the job unless that was the quid pro quo.
But I don't think Hartley or Presley will buy into that. I don't think I'm out of a job, so I'll take this job because I have to buy into that.
But equally, Paul Hartley's been in charge of a Premier League club before. Presley's been in charge of big clubs in Scotland and England before. It's a different situation. Any director of football might not need to be as hands-on. Bear in mind, this was a risk from day one. It was a risk Hearts were prepared to take, in the same way that Robbie Nielsen was a risk that they were prepared to take. It didn't work and they've acted on it, but whoever comes in next might not need the same degree of management. And when you said I was mitigating the Ian Cathro regime, mitigating some of the circumstances, but the one word that you kept hearing was leadership.
Yeah.
They needed somebody there who could lead the dressing room. Ian Cathro and Austin McPhee had the same background, both seen as kind of proactive, modern, progressive coaches. Sometimes you need a better balance.
Yeah, okay. You can give us your view on who you think should be the next Hearts manager at Peter and Ruffy on Twitter and at facebook.com/Peter and Ruffy. We'll be focusing on the Champions League very soon. We thought we'd give you a little European question. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's football show. Who's going to become the next Hearts manager is dominating our thoughts. Just prior to the break, we were looking at 4 possible candidates. There could be others in there. Who would you give it to, Darryl?
I think Austin McPhee will get it for the next 4 games to play himself into contention for the job. Hard to look beyond Stephen Presley.
That's a big call. 4 games, the assistant.
It depends how quickly they can get somebody else. You know, obviously if Stephen Presley's free, Paul Hartley's free. It depends what route they go down. Do they go down with a Hearts theme, you know, or do they stay away from that? You know, obviously Craig Levein knows both of these guys, and that might just sway it. But I think the fans over the next couple of days will have something to say about it as well, because fans being fans will want their say. You know, and if you appoint somebody they don't fancy or whatever's happened before, you know, it might not work for them. But I don't think any of these two would do anything wrong.
Yeah, and of the outside contenders on some of the lists, I mean, I've actually heard some people commenting that maybe Craig Levein would step into the hot seat. There's also Gary Locke, Alan Johnston in there too. Jim McIntyre's got a good CV, won a League Cup with a provincial club, but I'm not so sure. I don't think that. This is a strange thing, but just because I know so many Jambos, I just don't think the mates that I'm talking to would stomach Levein at the moment. I think his stock at the moment is low.
Yeah, but again, bear in mind where the club were. Bear in mind where the club finished up when Robbie Neilson decided to leave. Now, people say, why did he want to leave? It doesn't matter. He left a team that were top 3 in the Scottish Premiership, having the year before been in the Championship. I think people will be pleasantly surprised by Austin McPhee. I think there's a great opportunity for him to show not just that he's got the coaching smarts, but the personality. And unfortunately, the one thing that let Ian down, communication externally to the media.
Yeah.
And a lot of people then said, well, if that's how he communicates externally, what's he going to be like in a dressing room? And that leadership question was never really answered. Can Austin do it? He's certainly been influential enough to bring in some of the players. So let's see how he gets on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm a big fan. He certainly impressed me on more than a few occasions that I've spoken to him. Would that be enough for the Hearts fans? Austin McPhee going into the hot seat. Give us your thoughts on that. As far as the players are concerned, I just hope I don't read over the next couple of days, Ruffy, from any player. It does my head in. We let the gaffer down. It just annoys the life out of me. You know, you should have thought of that before he got the boot. Just yesterday, the Hearts captain Christophe Berra was talking about how the players really will have to respond.
Football it's a hard sport, and when things are not going well, it can build up. And obviously, at the moment, the fans have their frustrations. A lot of it is carried on from last year, which is you know, that's fans. If you're not winning games, you're going to get stick. And us as players, we need to be thick-skinned, and we've got to take it on the chin, and we've got to work through it. And we need to show big characters. We need big characters on the pitch. We need to do that more on the pitch, really, and we need to start turning these draws, especially at home, into victories. And the only way we're going to win the fans over really is by winning games and starting the season well, and you know, doing the best as we can. And which is, as a club, we want to finish in Europe. We want to finish as high as up the table as possible, and we want to win cups. Obviously, we're not involved in the League Cup anymore, which is disappointing. But as I say, we've got a good squad, we've got good players, and we should be doing better.
Last word on this one, Ruffy. I think the key issue here is quite simply they need to get a manager that can quickly stabilise the squad, get something out of them, get a response, and fill the fans full of confidence when they eventually have to fill a 20,000-seater stadium.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see who they do go for. I mean, Darryl's obviously threw out a case for some of the guys, and quite rightly so. You wouldn't say no to anything. If it's Paul Hartley or Stephen Presley, you wouldn't. But I don't think the Austin McPhee 4 games, if he does particularly well, he would get the job. I just think they need a name in there, somebody established. You know, I'm not saying Austin wouldn't do well, but I think the Hearts fans and Anne Budge will want somebody with a bit of experience, somebody to go in there that the fans and the players themselves can, as soon as he walks through the door, they're going to lift their heads and go, wow, I don't know, how did we get him?
It's interesting, if he didn't think he'd a chance, would he and should he have walked along with Ian Cathro, Austin McPhee? How often do you see it that the assistant goes as well and appoint a principal? If he didn't think he'd a realistic chance of getting the job or being given some kind of indication that you've got a case to make here, then you would go and appoint a principal with your coach.
Yeah, and just to kick into touch, I mean, some people are putting 2 and 2 together with the Ian Cathro being pictured down at Wolves. Of course, I think his mentor, Nuno Espirito Santo, they worked together at Rio Ave, they worked together at Valencia, so you automatically think he was down there saying, listen, I think I'm for the boot. He was actually down there probably. I'm led to believe scouting for players, but
give it a week.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Darryl. You know, you wouldn't put it against him to eventually
Listen, this
go
was
there.
a guy who was missed when he left Newcastle United. Rafa Benitez, when he took over, could have said, "I don't know you, Scottish coach, off you go." Kept him, was impressed by him. A lot of players, Grant Hanley, who was down there, Matt Ritchie, swore by Ian Cathro's message, swore by his methods. Doesn't make him a bad coach, just means he's been unsuccessful in his first managerial role.
Well, can I pick up on that point on this? And I don't want to dwell too much on it because we've dedicated quite a bit on this, but is it a major setback, Ruffy, for people who are not of the football fraternity, who've come through the ranks as professional players? You know, everybody, possibly a number of people who, and I hate to use the term laptop managers, but a number of people who may well have not gone the conventional way about becoming a manager. Is this a major setback for them?
I think it depends on how much experience they've had, you know, and where they've been. I mean, Cathro had been at top clubs, you know, but I just, looking at him, looking at his interviews, looking at the way he handled it, I thought that he's a coach. He might be a very, very, very good coach and a number 2, and I think that's what his position is. I just didn't see him as a manager. I didn't see him as a figurehead at any point when things weren't going well. He never came out strong, you know, and battered the questions that he got. It was a sort of a experience he didn't like, and I mean, you have to watch Arsene Wenger at his press conferences, and you know, he's got the respect, and when you've got the respect of the media and everything, it makes it easier for you. But I just think he will be a fantastic coach wherever he goes.
Yeah, and of course headlines like, if it wasn't for the goalposts it would have been an even game, didn't really help, but I won't dwell on that. Anyway, let's move on. Talking of headlines, here's the back page headlines this morning, which obviously we're not aware of. Ian Cathro being sacked. Scott Brown saying this is huge, it's life or death. Maybe I'll put that down to a sub-editor sensationalising that one. It's not quite as big as that. Lee Wallace saying he's targeting the title join, and there's just an example of the difficulties when you're not playing well. I'm ashamed to walk down the street, says Christophe Berra in Edinburgh. And there's the headline again. And also Ibrox United, this is Lee Wallace just alluding to the fact that you know, all the players are behind the manager, and it's a good team spirit in there. Here's the Daily Mail, which again has Lee Wallace there next to the SPFL trophy, and there's a line there, Maloney was the ideal man for a Celtic role, says Scott Brown, and the Courier has Darren Adee with the SPFL trophy. That would certainly be a shock if that ended up in May, I have to be honest with you, not to upset too many Dundee fans, but there you have it. That's all for newspapers. Sean Maloney's an interesting one, Ruffy, because I thought certainly in the summer there was a real chance of him going to Aberdeen.
Yeah, I thought so as well, and it depends again if Brendan Rodgers think there is a role for him there. I think Brendan Rodgers likes people with a bit of experience as backup. Obviously, losing Roberts is a big miss, and the way it worked was if Forrest wasn't playing well and Roberts came on, You know, if Forrest isn't playing well, there doesn't seem to be somebody to take that role. So if he still thinks he's got something to offer, he would be a player that would be a fringe player. But he's still a quality player.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one other story that hit the Courier there that I was going to mention was Michael O'Halloran, happy to be back at St Johnstone, happy to be under a manager who has faith in him as well. And management at times can be about someone just putting his arm around you, making you feel that bit better about yourself.
I was happy St Johnstone, who got $500,000 for him just over a year ago and have now got him back. There's a player with something to prove. A player who has pace, the ability to get goals, who was never really, as you said, thrown an arm around them at Rangers. Somebody who never fulfilled his potential, but arguably was never given a chance. So a real asset for St Johnstone. It's just a shame that they could only get him after the European run had ended, because they could have been doing with him in those qualifiers.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, coming up after the break, we are looking towards Norway and Trondheim in particular, because it's Rosenborg against Celtic. We will hear from Scott Brown, the Celtic captain. We'll also hear from the assistant coach, Chris Davies, on the situation with Lee Griffiths, and we'll be speaking to a Norwegian blogger who follows their football very, very closely indeed. Is it going to be a shock? Will Celtic be waving goodbye to a possible £30 million kitty if they're not in that draw on Friday for the knockout stages? We'll discuss that after this quick break. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show here on STV2. The journalist Darryl Broadfoot is our Bootroom guest. We're switching our attention from Hearts to Celtic in European football. It's on a knife edge, 0-0 from the first leg of that Champions League qualifier last week at Celtic Park. And this one is not even to get into the group stage. This game is to see who's going to get into the playoff draw on Friday morning. So it's on a knife edge, and the big question is all about Lee Griffiths. Will he play? Will the Celtic players and the management and the backroom staff all headed out to Norway and Trondheim for tomorrow night's fixture? And a number of them all looking at Lee Griffiths to see if he was fit. Well, he's with the party, which is one thing that's positive about it. He did train with Sviatchenko, Ruffy, so I think that will lift the spirits of everyone.
Yeah, and again, we don't exactly know because we're here. They actually are there. They know exactly how fit he is, and the fitness tests they'll be probably put him through, so they'll know exactly right now whether he's going to make that or not. We're just sitting here guessing. It'd be great if he was, because I think they need him. We're talking about Forrest up front, and Rogic didn't work, you know, so I just think it'd be a massive boost for everybody if he made it.
Here's the assistant coach, Chris Davies, on that possibility.
He's obviously not been training all the time in the last few weeks, but he's had some good rehab. He's worked very, very hard. And he's available for us, which is a big boost. I say we don't want to give too much away in terms of whether he's going to start or not, but he's available. He's an important player to us, and that's really good for us.
I think he plays.
If he's not fit, you don't allow him to travel, because you then have 2 days worth of the circus around Lee Griffiths. If he flies on the plane, I think he's got to start. Even an 80% Lee Griffiths with something to prove. Bear in mind he let the team down with the suspension. Yes, he's had an injury, but you only have to look at the Scotland-England game to show that he is a match winner. And this is on a knife edge now. This is the whole season in one game. I think he has to start. Yeah,
I think his inclusion, Ruffy, totally transforms the way Brendan Rodgers goes about this one.
Yeah, and as far as Rosenborg's concerned as well, they won't know either where he's fit. And if that team line comes in to the dressing room and his name's on it, you know, that gives them something to think about, you know, because they may be working on the assumption he's not going to be fit, and then all of a sudden he's there. They have to do something about it. Darryl said, okay, they would have probably preferred Dumbelli in a European game, But Lee has proved time and time again that he can cause defences problems and he can score fantastic free kicks.
Yeah, and of course there's so much at stake. Some reckon around £30 million if you can get past this part and the other playoff match into the group stage as well. Scott Brown was talking yesterday as the captains of all the Premiership clubs assembled at Hampden, and he knows exactly what's at stake.
Looking forward to it. We managed to make sure they didn't score, especially in their away game. So now it's our turn to go over there. They need to come out a little bit more than what they did at Celtic Park, and here's hoping we can take our chances. The gaffer's very relaxed that way, and he knows that we've got attacking midfielders that can go on and create chances, score goals. Scotty, Tom, Jamesy Forrest, Callum McGregor scored the hat-trick of the weekend. So we know we've got people there that can score goals, and that's why we've got a big squad, and that's why we've got to believe and put faith in other people as well.
Yep, I'm buying into what you're saying, Darryl. I think you put him on from the start and then just see how much you can get out of him. I mean, even from set pieces, as we all know, you know, he can produce a moment of magic.
He gets goals, but the one thing he doesn't get enough credit for, which he's evolved in the last year to 18 months, he can hold the ball up, he can bring other players in. Celtic have got no qualms about flooding the box, so long as they've got somebody to hold it up. And that was the problem with Rodgers. It wasn't natural to him. If he doesn't make it, you could actually make a better case for Scott Sinclair, because they will need to hit in the break. They're the away team and they need pace to get in behind. But if Lee Griffiths can give them a good hour to 80 minutes, hold the ball up, do what he does best, not only is he a goal threat, he brings the three players around him into the game as well.
Yeah, listen, we might as well get into the Rosenborg camp now to see how they're feeling about themselves. I caught up with the Norwegian blogger Christian Wolf to get his thoughts on the confidence surrounding that Rosenborg side now.
I think they feel more confident than before the first game. I think Celtic's reputation, especially after last season, and the issues that Rosenborg has had this season, I think they saw this as a very tough draw. I think they maybe expected something a bit more from Celtic at Celtic Park. And I think they will be happy with the result. I think there's a little bit of annoyance maybe that they couldn't get their away goal, because quite frankly, they probably should have got at least one goal. But I think the 0-0 result will very much impact how the game will be played tomorrow from Rosenborg's side, because I think Rosenborg are quite aware of their weaknesses and Celtic's strengths, and I wouldn't be surprised if Rosenborg goes out and copy the game plan from the away game, even at home.
Yeah, and I just wonder, and picking up on your point there, I just wonder if Delanley and Bentner's missed opportunities in that first leg will come back to haunt them.
They might very well, and I think that will very much affect their game plan, because Celtic is a better team than Rosenborg, and I think Rosenborg is aware of that. So I think they will try and do the same game plan. I think they will want to restrict Celtic's wide men, because their own fullbacks are good offensively, but they're more questionable defensively. So I think those misses will have a big impact on this game as well. So I think you'll see quite a similar game plan, and I think Rosenborg we're quite happy to keep it on 0-0 for quite a while.
I don't think the Rosenborg camp will be too surprised, Christian, to learn that Eric Zviachenko and Lee Griffiths trained this morning.
Absolutely. I think there is some on the Rosenborg side as well, in terms of there's some injured players that might not start as well. Zviachenko is an interesting one. Obviously, you have Christopher Ayer, who's familiar with Rosenborg. He's played at Rosenborg before. He knows the players. He knows the league. I'm a big fan of Christopher Ayer, as you might imagine. So I don't think Zviachenko is in this particular game an improvement on Ayer. Obviously, he's more experienced. But also, I think Christopher Ayer, even with his young age, is somebody who can handle that pressure. And I think he'd be ready to step in and do just as well as he did in his first leg against Rosenborg. Lee Griffiths is obviously I think that will shape Celtic's game plan so much, because without him, they don't have a recognised striker. They'll have to use somebody like James Forrest or Sinclair on top, and that'll change the dynamic in their forward play as well. So I think they'll hope more that Griffiths don't play rather than Zwiechenko.
It's funny listening to you there, Christian, about the game plan and possibly, again, Rosenborg looking to that 4-5-1 lineup. But Brendan Rodgers clearly is hoping that with home advantage that they may well come out and give Celtic those little pockets of space.
I bet it is, because if they do, I think Celtic could very easily rip them apart quite quickly. And I do think Rosenborg is aware of their limitations. So it will be interesting to see if Kåre Ingebrigtsen, the Rosenborg manager, if he gives in to temptation and he says, let's go a bit more, or if he sits just as deep as he has been. I think that, Rosenborg's best defender, one of the best players in Rikke Nielsen, he doesn't seem like he will be playing. So his replacement is not as good as all. So I wonder if that will tempt him to say, look, we actually need to sit in defensively here because we don't have our best defender. In terms of, I just don't think they want to give Celtic that space. I think they will be very cautious. But then again, this is a Rosenborg team that when they play at home, they're used to dominating, they're used to attacking, but they're not used to teams being able to rip them apart as Celtic can do. So I think it's a really hard one to call in terms of Rosenborg's approach. I got a feeling they'll sit back, let Celtic come, and try and just replicate the game that had at Celtic Park, because if they can do that, I think they have quite a good chance in terms of a counter-attack, or especially at set pieces where they are good, that they could nick a goal. And if they get one, all bets are off for Celtic.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to finish with on that, I mean, Celtic will know that if they can get a goal out there, it's been a long time since they've actually gone 2 consecutive games without a goal, so they'll be going all out to try and get that crucial away goal. A draw would be enough for them, especially if they can score. But give us your gut feeling on it, Christian. How do you think it's all going to pan out?
I think, so I'll probably be wrong, but I'll think it'll be a long night. I think Rosenborg will be very cautious. I think they'll be happy to take extra time as well. My call, I think it'll be extra time. Might well be penalties. I think this is going to be a long night for Celtic.
Penalties. That's a nail biter. Ruffy, briefly.
Yeah, I think if Dundalk's good enough to go there and get a 1-1 draw, I think Celtic will be good enough as well.
Darryl?
2-0 Celtic, early goal and rip up the game plan that Christian was talking about there.
Okay, there you are. Can't get any better punditry than that. Here's the answer to the quiz question. There you are, Ruffy. Were you aware of that they were able to keep it?
I might have got most of them.
Yeah.
But it's all right saying that now. And I've seen the answers.
Yeah,
I got all of them.
Yeah, exactly. The original trophy, I think, Real Madrid. It's no surprise Real Madrid were awarded. They just kept on winning it. They had a sensational side with the likes of Hento, Puskas and Alfredo Di Stefano. And then they changed the rules, actually. So now you get a replica of the European Cup if you win it, regardless of how many times. I think the new design was the first one that Celtic actually won in 1967. And then from there, you got people being awarded what was effectively an original made trophy.
You spend all day in Google.
Absolutely, honestly. See, when these things come when these things come up, Darryl, and you realise that Ruffy's not helping in any capacity, you have to come up with some questions.
So the boys' house I was in Postal, that's not the real one?
No. No, that's a replica. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Listen, we've talked about Hearts. We've talked about the many suggestions for the new Hearts manager. We've looked at Celtic in Europe. Of course, Aberdeen are going to be in Europe as well. I think the big dilemma for him, again, a striking dilemma. Derek McKinnon's just hoping that Adam Rooney can declare himself fit. That might give him another option to defend that 2-1 lead and maybe nick another one.
Yeah, but it's good that they go over there with a 2-1 lead, because previous round things are a wee bit anxious, and you looked at St Johnstone eliminated, Rangers eliminated, and thought, is this going to be a a whitewash before the league season's even begun. Aberdeen, I think, for all the players they've lost, have actually strengthened their first 11, and they'll go there with confidence that they can score goals. And one more goal in the first half, one more goal in the first hour, I think, puts the tie to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm throwing this curveball at you. You were Gordon Strachan's right-hand man at Scotland. If you know, it would have been a far easier job if we had 3 or 4 big clubs all competing in Europe in the halcyon days. You know, we just long for clubs to make it to the group stages. Nowadays, you know, sometimes it's just Celtic flying the flag, and that makes it difficult for even the international manager.
I talk about the coefficient. The coefficient has been propped up in the last 10 years by Celtic and Rangers. Rangers in recent years have not helped in any way. Yes, it would be great to have more Scottish clubs beyond the qualifying rounds. It would be even better if they qualified with a hardcore of Scottish players in the team. Scottish players do not get played early enough. You look at what happened with our youth teams. The 16s won the Orium tournament again. You saw the likes of Karamoko Dembele there. We have good players. We qualify for the 17s finals. We qualify for the 19s. Beyond that, they don't play first-team football. And then they wonder why the rest of European football catches up and then surpasses. Kieran Tierney got in because of an injury to Emilio Izagirre. Now look at him.
Yeah.
Andy Robertson was at Queen's Park. Dundee United take a chance on him. £10 million player at Liverpool. We need to actually look at our young players, give them an opportunity, and not still call them young talent at 24 and 25.
Yeah, listen, we are tub thumping ourselves with regards to that. We're right behind you on that, Darryl. I think Scottish players need to be playing regularly, and we're going to be watching to see, as we mentioned in the show a couple of weeks ago, Ruffy, how many Scottish players are actually going to be in the starting 11 on August 5th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but as Darryl said, the older they get and the more experience they get of playing in tournaments abroad, coming up against better quality players, the result is you go back to your own club feeling good about yourself. And if the manager's prepared to give you a chance, I don't think you would let them down.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a demand now that Rangers are back in the top flight, because the Rangers-Hibs game, it's 11 days away. That's a sellout already before Rangers even take on Motherwell. Lee Wallace was out there yesterday at Hampden talking to the assembled members of the media, and the Rangers captain, first of all, mentioned the fact that poor result against Progress Niederkorn, the pain is still there. Yeah, we'll come back to that point. No surprise that the pain is still there from it. Friendlies won't take away that pain from him or the fans.
No, and as long as Rangers keep winning, the pain will go away, because if they were to go into a bad run, it would be brought up again. That's the way that we are, you know. But they look as if they've got their act together now, 2 or 3 good results. The Motherwell game will be another test for them coming along. But they look a better side than what they were last year.
Yeah, here is that aforementioned chat with Lee Wallace.
Days after, 4 or 5 days after, you're still hurting. There's no two ways about that. We're all hurting. But the demand at the club is that you have to quickly get back on it, and that's back onto the training pitch, and you have to forget about it. While it still hurts, you need to use it as a lesson. Guys that have came to the club, that feel the demand, the scrutiny that you're going to receive if things don't go well. And we responded. As I said, we've responded well in the last 10 days. We have generated a bit more belief and positivity about us, and we're all looking forward to the game at the weekend.
Yeah, Captain keen to stress that it's a united front, and I think Pedro Caixinha will be trying to foster that team spirit, backed up by results, Ruffy.
Yeah, and they'll go into the first game against Motherwell, obviously with these 2 results behind them. The fans will be looking forward to the season, and quite rightly so, because obviously being knocked out of Europe is a massive thing. But they'll know what's ahead of them, and they've got 2 or 3 players in that weren't playing in that game, and they'll hope to get it right. They need a good start. They really need a start, you know, because we've got some big sides back in there, and they'll all be pushing as well for that second or third.
Yeah, here's what the Rangers captain had to say, incidentally, about their ambitions this season.
I have the same mindset. I mean, obviously we take last season into consideration. We're well aware of the task, and we're well aware of how far off it we were, but our mindset won't change as Rangers players, and that's to win every single game, home or away, that we play, and win every competition that we enter. So if we manage to do that, we'll finish off in a stronger position than last season, that's for sure.
I like him as a guy. I think he is a tremendous ambassador for Rangers, and I think he totally gets what it's all about playing for Rangers. He doesn't want to be a captain who's never captained the side to a major honour.
Yeah, but it's a team game. The one thing he said is aware of how far away they were. This season they need to prove that it's how far away they were and not how far away they are. OK, losing out in Europe was a disappointment for them, more so financially than on the pitch. Rangers fans want to make sure they're not 39 points behind their greatest rivals again. Aberdeen, as I say, have strengthened. The challenge for Pedro Caixinha and all the new signings is to prove that they are, firstly, genuine contenders, and I think it's a big if, and secondly, that they're an improvement on last season's squad.
Yeah, strangely enough, Rob, I keep banging the drum about this. I think Hibs are going to be in the mix.
Well, when you say the mix, you know, I think if Neil Lennon was to get fourth, would be a great start.
Is that not in the mix for a championship side coming up?
Yeah, I think, but again, it depends where the points difference is. You know, you can be, as Darryl said, you can be fourth and be 30 odd points off the pace. But no, I think Neil Lennon will want to go in against the big sides to prove that they can compete with them, and that's where they'll get, you know, the success. You know, we've already saw full houses at Easter Road and seen the atmosphere there will be electric any time the big clubs come. So I think that'll be a good season for Hibs.
Yeah, here's the Hibs captain, David Gray.
It's a difficult one because I think we want to try and finish as high as we possibly can, and I think we've proven it. We match and play against teams in this level, so we're definitely going in full of confidence. But at the same time, we don't want to go in overconfident and arrogant. We realise it's a step up in league, but we do feel we've got a squad more than capable of challenging at the top end of the table rather than the bottom, that's for sure.
I think if they get Stokes, it'll be a huge boost.
Stokes will be a boost. Stephen Whittaker gives them experience at the back. Again, he's bought wisely over the summer. Neil Lennon will want to do what Hearts did last season. Finish strongly, having come up. Challenge they've got is what else is around. Aberdeen have strengthened. I genuinely think Hibs should be aspiring for top six. They've got the players, they've got the manager to do that. But looking at it on paper before a ball's kick's one thing, delivering from day one will be another.
Yeah, just one other footnote before we finish, Ruffy. Gordon Greer going back to Kilmarnock again. I think that's a good signing for Lee McCulloch.
Most definitely. Again, all the experience in the world. I think Darryl will back me up. I think it wasn't that long ago that Gordon thought he was good enough to play against Poland. Was it Poland?
Yep.
Away? And handled himself really well. I thought he was a star that night. And again, he will be a big player for them, and Lee McCulloch has really made some good signings.
And Gordon's kept himself in magnificent nick for 52 years of age.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not criticise people who are ageing, because I was unlucky enough to bump into Darryl on holiday, and believe me, his performance in 35-degree heat in a football strip is not something we're going to dwell on here, let me tell you. Anyway, on that note, I had to get it in. Thanks to Darryl Broadfoot for joining us here. He undoubtedly will be back on the show if he can fit it in his busy schedule. Join us tomorrow on the programme. We will be speaking to Jerry McCabe, the former Dundee assistant coach, as well as Gus McPherson coming up this week. Thanks to Darryl, from Ruffy and myself. Good night.